Playing at the heightened level of the NBA for 82 games put me in a state of sustained concentrated intensity for 7 or 8 months every year. When the season's over and I come back to a small gym like this, I refresh and return to my basic love of the game. And a key part of that love of the game, my love of play, is the pleasure I get in finding ways to play better. Steph Curry's new book, Shot Ready, is an overview of his NBA career broken up into 3 sections. 1, rookie, 2, leader, and 3, veteran. There's, as part of the rookie chapter, also a lot of great stuff about his childhood, and then my favorite is his description of growing up in the Air Canada Center, where the Raptors and his dad, Dell Curry, played. He writes, "In the Toronto Raptors arena, there's an elevator that takes you from the team locker room to the practice facility on the 300 level, but it's not just an elevator to me. It's a time machine. When I step into that elevator, suddenly I'm 13 again, excitedly ascending to the 300 level with my brother Seth, about to start the next session of our basketball education, back when the Air Canada Center was ours." So that's the end of the quote there. And it is interesting to just think about his upbringing. His dad is one of the great shooters. He was always in the running for 6th man of the year. He's led the league in 3-point percentage. And there just has to be these advantages to having your dad as an NBA player and a great 3-point shooter. And he talked about this recently on Mind the Game, the podcast with LeBron James and Steve Nash. He says another thing that he learned was just the professionalism, being around that environment, seeing how his dad interacted with other people in the NBA, not just his teammates, but also coaching staff and all the other people that work in the industry. So he wasn't shocked or, not starstruck, but just like he was used to what he would be walking into once he joined the league. Further on, he writes about these games where he would go to these weekend games and how he would spend that time with his brother. Quote, "But on weekends, when we were lucky enough to go to Raptors games, the arena became our playground. As long as we stuck together," Seth is 3 years younger than me, "we were free to roam. We didn't know at the time that every usher and staff member was looking out for us too." And he'll go on to describe how he would split up this playtime. They would be on the court during warm-ups, so they're around the players then. Sometimes they'd be able to play one-on-one with one of the Raptors players. Then the game would start. They would go up that elevator to the practice facility, and Seth and him would just play the audio from the game, the in-stadium announcer, in-arena announcer, while they just played on the practice court. They'd do that. They'd mimic players from the opposing team. So he talks about the defender they'd be pretending to play against Allen Iverson, whoever else was the team was playing that day. Then at halftime, after halftime, they'd go back to watch the second half of the game. And he writes, "My time in Toronto with my dad and brother was the beginning of my realization that so much of the game is mental. I noticed that every great player, whether they were a star or a brilliant role player, in their first season or in their 10th, showed the same mental commitment. No matter how long they'd be playing, the great ones had the confidence that they were the best, but they all wanted to get better." And this is sort of a theme throughout the book, this idea of constantly wanting to get better. And then also, of course, the mental side and the physical side both being very important. That, yes, he's super well conditioned, but also he needed the mental strength to get through some of the down years, especially as he was going through the cycle of injuring his ankle, going through rehab, which he says is the hardest thing that he's done in his career is rehab. And I think it's like an 18-month cycle of injuring his ankle, going through rehab, returning, re-injuring the ankle right when you think you're going to get back into it, and then going through rehab again for 18 months straight. So just continuing to be mentally strong to get through that and to have confidence when you come back. Then again, back to this childhood and his dad teaching him how to shoot and just having to change his form because he is undersized, and that was maybe even more so true when he was in high school. And his parents recognized that he would need to change his shot, that his shot release was too low. He was doing this catapult thing that you'll see kids do where they want to shoot from distance, and they will kind of launch it from their waist. So his release point was too low for him to be effective as his opponents grew, as he was going to go through high school and then through college. So he writes, "My dad had trained himself to be a great shooter in high school when his coach gave him the key to his barn, which had a beat-up floor and basket. Hours and hours, rain or snow, cold or hot, he knew not to rush the process. The average kid's temptation might be to make a couple of shots in the paint and quickly move to the three-point line. But he taught me that you have to rigorously train your body in the proper form on close shots before you move out to the arc. The repetition is how you lock in your mechanics. This is where I learned, not intellectually, but in my body, that consistency at the point of release is the key to great shooting." That's the end of the quote. And it is another theme through this book is just consistency, putting the reps in, building the mechanics. And when he's talking specifically about shot form, he says, follow Klay Thompson. He has perfect mechanics. Don't follow me, because his mechanics aren't perfect. And what he says is that first you do build that, and then you can adjust it after that. So that's something that he says he does, that he does have like slight rotation in his lower body, so it's not perfectly straight towards the basket. But that was after all of these repetitions to be able to figure out that that's what worked for him. All right, so that's his childhood, and then, of course, goes to Davidson, has a successful career there, that Sweet 16, I think Elite 8 run, and then eventually is drafted by the Warriors. After thinking he was going to go to the New York Knicks, the Warriors pick him up. I think it's like one spot early, and then, of course, it's after the T-Wolves draft. Is it Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio ahead of him? And yes, so he ends up on the Don Nelson Warriors. And what I've done here is, for the rookie section, I just have like 3 quotes just about the different coaches that he played for in his early years on the Warriors. So again, the first one, Don Nelson, and there's this idea of purpose and fun. So the purpose part is that Don Nelson was in the running with, or second place. Lenny Wilkins had more total NBA coaching wins, and they knew they weren't going to, like the Warriors knew they weren't going to win a championship, but they found purpose in trying to get, I think it's 26 wins for Don Nelson to beat that record, and they were able to accomplish that and have something to celebrate for this season. But what the other side of this that I wanted to highlight is Don Nelson and this idea of fun and just being in a fun system to play in as a basketball player, especially for Steph Curry's style of play, where he wants to have a lot of movement and shooting. So he writes, "I had to laugh when Coach Nelson recently told ESPN that the strategy was really just about working with what you have. You only play Nelly ball when you don't have a very good team or when you have a bunch of good small players and not many good big players." He said, "When you have bad teams, you've got to be creative to win games you're not supposed to win. So maybe we were just a bad team." That's the end of the quote. And he talks about his first time joining practice, and he had a teammate that he knew from North Carolina, so that's Anthony Morrow. And so he chats with Anthony Morrow and CJ Watson about how practice is going to go, and here's what they say. "Nelly's going to show up 5 minutes before practice," CJ said. "He's going to set a chair down right on the sideline, and after we warm up, he's going to call plays. Amo finished for him, and then you're just going to hoop." "That's the practice plan?" "Yeah," they said together, smiling. And he goes on to say that that's exactly what happened. They did some skill work, then the chair came out, and then Don Nelson comes out, sits down, blows his whistle, calls out some plays, and then would yell at people who weren't playing fast enough or shooting enough. And he writes, "Nelly ball was a coach's invention, a style of run-and-gun offense relying on speed, but with not much use for even the fundamentals of defense. The system is sometimes called small ball, but it was really designed for Coach Nelson to spread the floor with all his best players at once, regardless of their traditional positions, and get the ball in the basket as quickly as possible." That's the end of the quote. And I'm reading this Phil Jackson book, Masters of the Game, where it's this like conversation about the NBA 75, and he a couple times mentions that Mike D'Antoni gets credit for modern basketball, for like this evolution to modern basketball, where like most recently we see like the All-Star game, the starters don't have to be of a certain position, so it's like positionless top 5 for the NBA All-Star starters. But Phil Jackson points out that Don Nelson should really get a lot of credit as well, because he was doing this run and gun offense with the Mavericks and then with the Warriors. And it's playing with your best players all at once, getting the ball in the basket as quickly as possible. So that's this Freeform game that he gets to play in his years with Don Nelson. Next, Mark Jackson comes in, and the one word here I would put down is belief. And that's something that Coach Jackson has for Steph Curry and the team. So he writes, this is, I think, after game 3 of I think it's the 2013 series against the Denver Nuggets. He says, it was after that one that Coach Jackson gave the press a phrase that would spark 1,000 think pieces and rebuttals. Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, in my opinion, they're the greatest shooting backcourt in the history of the game. Reporters gave him a million whatabouts to qualify it, but he held tight and added, call my bluff. Somewhere inside of me, I may have allowed myself the thought that Klay and I were doing something special, but hearing someone take that megaphone to say he believed in you when everyone's laughing, neither Klay nor I would have ever said it ourselves. But when Coach Jackson puts his own reputation on the line and said it, it empowered us to quietly say to ourselves, well, maybe we are. Call my bluff, Coach said. When someone vouches for you like that, the pressure to prove them right is a powerful motivator, stronger even than the need to prove someone else wrong. We were determined to back him up. That's the end of the quote. And it is this thing, Steph Curry had that commercial where he reads early scouting of him entering the NBA draft, and he's too small, won't be able to get his shot off, that sort of thing. And he's able to, that's kind of implying that he's using this fuel to, this doubt from others as fuel. Proving someone else wrong can be really good fuel, but it can burn very, I've heard this, I forget exactly, I don't know, some self-development book about, it's a very powerful fuel, doubt, like proving someone else wrong, but it can kind of destroy you inside slowly as well, because there's like this underlying bitterness underneath it. And it doesn't seem like Steph Curry is this bitter person. And it does seem like a fuel that's as powerful without that kind of bitterness is being able to prove someone else right. So this is Coach Jackson saying that he believes in them, believes that they're the best shooting backcourt, which maybe was a little crazier, like probably like a little crazier to say this is 12 years ago now. But now seeing what else Steph Curry did after that, and Klay Thompson, but Steph Curry becoming this like transcendent player after that, the multiple titles and all of that, it does seem less crazy. So they've been able to probably change a few minds if there were people doubting that they're the best backcourt in history. Of course, like no one's ever you're not gonna get everyone to agree with something like that. Then the coach that coached them to multiple championships, Steve Kerr, comes in, and Steve Kerr is, of course, a big reason that joy becomes this ethos for the Warriors. And the free-form play continues on here, and there's this idea of trust that needs to be built as well, that Steve Kerr comes in and says, I'm not coming in here to reinvent the wheel. I know that we have the foundation to win a championship here. And something great about this book is that Steph Curry talks about some of these moments you'll remember from his career and just what he was thinking through them. So some of the examples are like that 3 against OKC, and then, of course, like any of the championship wins. And for this one, this quote that I'm going to read, it's this highlight that you've probably seen where he just is dribbling in traffic and then launches a shot that goes in against the Clippers. So he writes, as the ball floated through the net, Coach Kerr threw his hands on his head, shocked that I took the shot. And maybe even more shocked that I made it. That's the moment everyone focused on later. But I wasn't looking at Coach, I was looking at Ekpe. As soon as I'd gone up, he crossed his arms and slumped on the bench. Look at this fool. And Ekpe is his former teammate on the Warriors, and he was playing for the Clippers at the time. And before the game, he told Steph, hey, don't do anything crazy tonight. And of course, he ends up doing this, which is one of his crazier plays. And he continues here, he writes, that's as close as I got to getting my license taken away by Coach, but it ended up having the opposite effect. For the first time, he acknowledged that he wouldn't tell us what a bad shot is. This was what me and Klay needed. Trust. Once we had that, we could stretch our shot-taking creativity and imaginations. We could redefine what a good shot was. Now that kind of offensive creativity became part of the team's DNA. And so now they have the foundation for a championship team, they have the experience playing for Don Nelson, Mark Jackson, and now Steve Kerr. And this brings us to the second section of the book, Leader. And this covers the Warriors through their championship years, those first three championships. So the three championships in 4 years. And one of the things here also throughout the book is not just the specific moments, but also things he did throughout his career or in like the scope of a season. And something he writes about is rituals. He writes, "Rituals are vital to any team, not for superstition, but to settle your nerves. They can help you relax so you can focus and enjoy being present in whatever game it is. Game number 1, number 82, playoffs, the finals, wherever you are." And that's the end of the quote. And he writes further in the book just about how weird the seasons during COVID were because it threw off the usual flow of the season, that the breaks were different. You're playing the playoffs were happening in different months. It really threw things off. But then that means if things are thrown off at that scope of a season, then you can still find rituals in your weeks and your days and in heading to a game. So he writes, "For me, it starts with my ankle braces and socks. I put my lefts on before my rights, always. Left side brace, then right. Left shoe, right shoe. And every year I pick a new song to play for the last 3 minutes of the drive to the arena. People expect it to be some inspirational track, but one year it was New Editions, If It Isn't Love. The song in any ritual lets your body and mind know it's time." That's the end of the quote. And many players have these rituals, and Michael Jordan was very particular about how he put his shoes on and would start with a new pair of shoes sometimes because he started to put them on the wrong way, or they were given to him already laced. No, he wanted to be the one to lace them. And it's to let your body and mind know that it's time. Then he writes, Steph Curry writes about being in complete control in their first championship season, that you go through that, you don't know you're going to win the championship, and then he talks about the feeling of finally doing it, and he writes, "I couldn't anticipate the new level of freedom that winning a championship would give the team. When you get one, you get greedy. Because the stress of getting that first one, 82 games locked in, then more games in the playoffs, you've got to keep your head down. But when you win, you get to look up again. You get to feel the euphoria of final victory. And when it's over, you have something you never had before. It is no longer a mystery how hard it is to win a championship. You realize you had to be locked in all season long. You could not afford to let go of a regular season game in December, and you never will again. That knowledge is a responsibility. You now have to breathe that into the people who've joined your team because of your success. You can't just give the rookies your confidence. You must show that to them, that every game, every possession, every shot matters." That's the end of the quote. And this reminds me of that idea of like the disease of more, that you win that first championship. Now people want to have bigger contracts. They're winners now. You get other people joining, as he mentioned, that are joining because now they want to join a winning organization, but they want their minutes. And you know how hard it was to get the first one. Now you have that target on your back. You know that you can't, every game will matter. You need to give yourself as easy of a path as you can once the playoffs start. And that means locking in all season long, winning those regular season games early. And then, of course, they then go on a tear in the season after. They're motivated by this. And now the motivation, again, is not necessarily joy and all that. It's proving people wrong. People doubted that they had a valid championship, that they only won because the Cavaliers got injured, that Kyrie hurt his knee and Kevin Love hurt his shoulder. So they beat a hobbled Cleveland team, and they use that as fuel to achieve their 73-9 season. Of course, doesn't have the happy ending, and he writes about losing control after being in complete control. And this is, of course, Game 7. He writes, "My ultimate experience of losing control came at the worst possible time, the last minute of Game 7 of the 2016 finals. When I get asked to describe a winning streak, I struggle to give words to the feeling, but I can tell you exactly what that last minute felt like. Helplessness. I was trying to connect my body and my mind. I had no idea how to do it in that moment, but I was trying. Somehow, that makes it worse. There's always going to be a part of me that can go right back there. One of those nightmares that keep happening. We're tied 89-89 at Oracle, June 19, 2016. I've just badly missed a three-point attempt on our end. With 1:09 remaining, Cleveland takes a timeout. When play resumes, Kyrie Irving and I are isolated at the arc. Kyrie takes a shot over me. It goes in. The seconds tick off. And that's the end of the quote. Of course, you know how that game ends. They don't complete the 73-9 season with a championship. And a lot of what people remember about these playoff battles between the Warriors and the Cavaliers is that the Cavs came back from 3-1, from being down 1-3. And so another theme throughout this book is this idea of visualization. So it's as a positive thing, something that Steph Curry can always do is visualize these successful situations, being able to like visualize his shot going in. There's a certain point where he was losing motivation or losing confidence, and he had someone put a highlight tape together of him and Davidson to remind himself like, oh yeah, this is like the level of play that I can get to, and then he's able to use that as visualization. And then as he has more successes in the NBA, he's able to just recall that and then boost his confidence by thinking of that. But the downside of visualization is maybe you build this muscle to be able to visualize things, and like he says, he can visualize this loss in his mind, that last minute. Like it's a very specific thing to 1 minute of your career where you feel helpless. Then, of course, they get KD in the offseason, and he writes about what KD did for him. And it goes with that theme from like what I opened the podcast on, where he is saying that, let me go back. He says, a key part of the love of the game, my love of play, is the pleasure I get in finding ways to play better. And that's exactly what KD does for him. He writes, it was the lesson I learned in pickup games in Charlotte. Surround yourself with harder working people. And that's who Kevin Durant was for me and who I was for him. We would work out together maybe once or twice a week, same with Clay, working on our craft. But there would be times when 4 of us would be using the 4 different courts of our practice facility. Each one of us would have his own basket, doing his own work. There would just be this raw energy in there of each of us kind of one-upping each other with how hard we were going. All of us always watching the others to keep the pace we were going at and the intensity that we had, constantly leveling up. It was such a healthy environment to just get better. That's the end of the quote. And it is this thing that he brought in a player that some people argued played better than him in those seasons. And of course, the detractors will say, or like the KD haters will say that he only was able to win Finals MVP because of the gravity around Steph Curry and all of that. But in any case, KD probably got better playing with Steph, and Steph probably got better playing with KD because they were able to push each other. And yeah, just this idea of constantly leveling up, constantly learning, trying to improve, finding different motivation to improve, whether that is that proving someone right, proving some other people wrong. It's a constant in his career, just getting better and better and better. And he even says in the book that he still feels he's in his prime. And he's kind of, I'm recording this the week that he had 2 40-plus point games against Wemby and the Spurs. And he still looks to be near the peak of his powers. So definitely an impressive career here. So then something that they hadn't done was win a championship in Oracle, as in like closing the final series out in Oracle. And of course, there's the loss. The Game 7 loss happened in Oracle, so not exactly the best memory to have. But he writes about finally being able to win and celebrate in Oakland. He writes, the last 9 minutes of the game felt like a whole week. The win felt so far away, but it was right there in front of us. It just took forever to hear that final horn. It was only when I saw KD kind of break down emotionally across from the bench that I knew, oh, we're here, I thought. We made it. This is what we all wanted. When I say all, I don't mean the team or the coaches. It was everyone in Dub Nation. I wanted this for them, here in our home, and the energy in the building did not disappoint. Probably the loudest I've ever heard in an arena to this day. To see the fans who stuck with us to the buzzer, the same ones who stuck with us till the buzzer when we lost, to see all the confetti falling around them, it was finally the night that Oakland deserved. That's the end of the quote, and there's, yeah, definitely he captures pretty well in the book, just sort of like the magic that Oracle had, and he does talk about visiting the Chase Center when it was being constructed and trying to show his excitement and saying the things that an excited person would say, like, wow, that's crazy. But then he talks about, like, on the way home, just realizing, like, oh, just because like this is going to be our home arena doesn't mean automatically that it feels like home. The moments, the memories and things are not in Chase Center, not yet at that point. So, but yeah, this is just a special moment for him to win a championship, close the game in Oracle, to be able to celebrate with those Oakland fans who have been so loyal, like one of the best fan bases in the league. In particular, those Oakland fans that were there from the We Believe Wars, and then going even further back, probably like some of them were rooting for Don Nelson and the Run TMC Warriors. So he wins the championships with KD, then they lose to the Raptors, and there's probably a timeline where he doesn't win the championship after that, and he just goes on into his veteran years and has a good season, but is no longer at his peak. That's not what happens. We are in this timeline where he does win another championship, and this third section is about being a veteran now, post KD Warriors, trying again to be able to prove there was still that monkey on his back. He doesn't exactly like mention here not having the Finals MVP, but that was always kind of like the thing that you heard, that he hadn't won a Finals MVP. So still something to prove. And again, this is not, this next quote is not really about any specific moment, and this is more just like a general thing. It's this idea of breathing, the importance of breathing, and it's something that he mentions in earlier sections too, just the importance of training breathing specifically. Something that he mentions is a drill where he'll be doing like conditioning drills to bring his heart rate up, and then he has to continue to make shots at a certain rate. And I think on a recent podcast, he mentioned like being able to shoot at like 170 beats per minute and keep the accuracy up. And that he would do other things where he's doing the conditioning, and then put his trainer would put a sandbag on his chest so that he could practice like very deep breathing. And he writes about this late in his career. He writes, "The deeper I get into my career, the more important it is that I have control over my breathing. It is the smallest detail that expands into everything I do. It is the secret weapon. One no one can see me do when I utilize it on the court. The vets I play with need the reminder to breathe too. The stakes are too high when you're older. People are looking at you to see if you've plateaued. And sometimes you get a little fed up with other people's learning curves. So you start yelling at a ref, whether or not they had it coming, or throwing your mouth guard. Or you make a new hire feel small rather than showing them their potential to learn from a mistake. Success will never come without stress, but controlled breathing can help you train your response to that stress." That's the end of the quote. And yes, you always have control over the response, and it can be something that you practice. And one of the main things you can do is practice breathing. So I thought that was a nice, I guess, like tactical thing that people can take away. And of course, this like applies to more than just basketball, that you'll just be met with these moments of stress. Yeah, practicing breathing, taking that deep breath before you do anything crazy, always a nice idea. And yeah, he just talks about a little bit about the younger players and having to remind himself that, yes, they're on their phones too much, but they're under like different kinds of pressure. But at the same time, going into this next quote, he talks about leading the team, and there's a little bit of technology here as well, where he talks about the group chat. He writes, "We also give pointers in our group text, motivational speeches and messages from some of the team leaders. Pre-game, it will pop up on your phone. Draymond might have a word for us on what tonight's game means, then I'll chime in with some broader notes to build our confidence. I focus on reminding people that we're headed in the right direction, even if it's one of the moments when we have to turn a setback into a learning lesson." That's the end of the quote, and I'm just imagining this very passionate paragraph that like Draymond writes, and then it looks like an AI summary after, with Steph Curry comes in with some bullet points about like tactical things the team can do. I'm sure that's not what it actually looks like, but that's the visual that I have. And yeah, it was interesting to just read about, hey, there's some modern leadership using, the group chat. And then again, for this next quote, it's about motivation. So he had that year where they found motivation by trying to get Don Nelson to the record for most wins. And you just try to find these different challenges that you can have. And here I wrote small bites. So this is something where he's talking about the small wins that you can chase, whether that's, maybe most recently they had like this road, or I think they're like currently in this road trip. So just having it in your mind, okay, we're going to go on this road trip. Let's at least try to just have a winning record for this road trip. But here, he writes, veterans and new guys face different challenges, but the results can be the same: overthinking and freezing up. The new guys get in their heads wondering how they lost something that was working, either looking for someone else to blame or feeling they have been revealed as the imposter who is bringing everyone else down. Us veterans are having flashbacks, remembering how hard it is to win and the pain of driving home after a devastating loss. And he says that this loss of confidence can make you too careful and then so afraid that you become timid. And he says you need to override your instincts. So he writes, so what could the veterans offer the younger members of the team when we knew better than anyone how hard it is to win a game in the NBA? To win just one game, let alone our goal of winning a championship. Win just one game. The first thing we did was take big goals and turn them into bite-sized pieces. Accomplishable things became our guiding principle. Little wins that got us closer to an end goal that we were no longer going to talk about so much. Because if we kept talking about the end goal, it put too much pressure on everything that we did on a daily basis. So we took a step back and asked, what are those bite-sized pieces that we can obsess over? That's the end of the quote. And it is to say, yeah, if you're going through that rough patch, it's going to be hard to just leap out of it. If you're stuck in a rut, you need to, you can't just like try to go faster to get out of it. You'll just make that rut even deeper. So I like this idea of accomplishable things, bite-sized things. Figure out the small wins that you can have, and then those small wins will start to add up to build a foundation. And sometimes that foundation can lead to a championship. So I wrote here, back to the mountaintop, as the title for this next section. And Steph Curry writes about this championship. He against the Celtics. After all the craziness of the pandemic seasons, they didn't have a good enough record to make it to the bubble. He knew that he'd have, I think it was like an 8-month stretch straight without any games because of that, where he could use it as an opportunity to kind of like recharge, refocus. And he writes, as a veteran, you begin to understand that certain moments require a different level of performance. It's about that balance. You don't want to win so bad that you get in your own way and the pressure sends you spiraling in the wrong direction. Even in a hostile environment, you still got to show up and play. But sometimes that killer instinct has to come out. I cried after the horn of Game 6. We'd won our 4th championship. All that emotion from the last few frustrating years came flowing out in ugly tears. You carry that emotion with you all the time, even through all those little wins. Everything you pour into the work sticks with you. Every detail, every teammate you checked on, everybody you prayed for when they had an injury. All the years of trying to fill in the right pieces and the right guys, while also thanking God every day that you get to play this game at the highest level. You carry that with you until it's something you don't even realize you're carrying. That's the end of the quote. And so he has that championship. Now monkey's off his back. He has the finals MVP. They've won without KD. He has nothing left to prove. And then not covered in this book, but something that he talked about recently on the Mind the Game podcast is then he goes to the Olympics and he starts out sort of in a slump up until the semifinal game and the country in a way. But certainly his team is his team is confident he's going to eventually come out, have the breakout game, and everyone's kind of waiting for it. He, of course, has that in the semifinals, and then completely unforgettable moments, those last 4 3-pointers against Wemby and France. And that really, really, I think, like cements his legacy. And I guess I will leave with the quote that he has at the end of the book where he's talking about joy and just finding himself shooting around in his yard. He says, last Saturday night, after the kids' bedtime, I threw on a hoodie and went out to our backyard court. My dog's following me. It's cold at night here in Northern California, even in summer. Nothing like where I grew up in Charlotte. We have a lot of trees by the house, and as a light breeze moved the oaks and evergreens, I shot the ball over and over again. This moment was what I was trying to get to as I retrained my shot 20 years ago in my parents' backyard. This pure joy. I didn't realize I was out there for about 30 minutes, just hooping. Bounce, shot, swish, joy at its highest.